The rain hadn't stopped for hours. It washed over the city, blurring neon lights and reflecting faces of people too busy to notice the storm. But inside the gleaming tower of Anders Enterprises, the storm outside had nothing on the one brewing in Ethan Anders' chest. He was known as the ruthless CEO, cold, calculating, a man who built an empire by breaking deals, and sometimes, people's hearts. Love to him was a liability. Yet today, his carefully constructed world was on the verge of crumbling, because in exactly 1 week, he had to walk into a family wedding with a bride by his side. Not because he wanted to, but because his grandmother, the only person he truly loved, had made one final wish before her surgery. Ethan, I want to see you happy, married, even if it's just symbolic. Let me leave this world knowing my grandson isn't alone. He couldn't tell her no, not her, but he also couldn't let anyone think he was desperate. So he did what ruthless CEOs do best. He made a deal. The offer. Be my fake bride for a week, Ethan said, his tone clipped and emotionless. Across the sleek office table, Lila Carter blinked. She was drenched from the rain, her clothes sticking to her skin, clutching a folder of rejected job applications. She had come to apply for a receptionist position, not whatever this was. I'm sorry, what? She stammered, thinking she'd misheard. Ethan's eyes didn't waver. It's simple. You'll pretend to be my fiancé for 1 week. Attend a family event. Play the role. In return, he slid a check across the table. You'll receive $50,000. Lila's heart thudded. That money could pay off her mother's medical bills, clear her debts, and keep their tiny apartment for another year. But still, pretending to marry a stranger? A coal billionaire who didn't even smile? This is insane, she whispered. Ethan leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly. Insane or not, I need an answer tonight. He was used to people saying yes immediately. But Lila wasn't like others. Her eyes held kindness but also strength. She studied him, not his suit, not his power, but the loneliness he didn't hide well enough. Finally, she said softly, I'll do it. But I won't lie to your grandmother. I'll play the part, but I won't break her heart. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't have a ready answer. The act begins. The next morning, Lila stood outside Ethan's penthouse, dressed in a borrowed white coat, her nerves trembling. The city below looked like a toy from his window. Everything in his life screamed control, his schedule, his home, even the way he stirred his coffee. But when he opened the door and saw her, hair still slightly messy from the rain, holding a small suitcase, something flickered in his chest. Something he hadn't felt in years. Maybe it was the way she smiled. Not polite, not forced, just real. It disarmed him. At his grandmother's estate, Lila transformed. She charmed the staff, helped in the kitchen, and even got the old lady laughing. Ethan watched in stunned silence as the woman who never let anyone close now held Lila's hand and called her, my future granddaughter. When Lila turned to look at him, her eyes sparkled with warmth. You're lucky to have her, she whispered. He swallowed hard. Yeah, he managed, though his chest felt tight. Walls and cracks each day of the fake engagement felt more dangerous, not because of exposure, but because of what Ethan was starting to feel. He'd catch her humming while cooking breakfast in his kitchen. He'd find her note beside his coffee mug. Don't forget to smile today. He told himself it was part of the act, but when she fell asleep on the couch one night, her head resting on his shoulder, his heart betrayed him. It beat faster, louder. This wasn't supposed to happen. He had hired her to fool the world, not himself. But love has a way of creeping through the cracks of even the coldest hearts. The secret just when everything felt too good. The truth threatened to tear it apart. A tabloid headline appeared. Ethan Anders' mystery fiancé exposed. She's a broke waitress. Lila's face was everywhere. Her mother's clinic was flooded with reporters. Ethan's board members whispered about scandal and manipulation. Lila broke down. You said no one would find out, she cried, voice shaking. I'll handle it, Ethan said coldly. But inside he was raging at the world, at himself, at how deeply he'd let her matter. That night, Lila packed her bag. Your grandmother doesn't deserve another lie, she said. I'll tell her the truth. Ethan caught her wrist, his voice rough. If you walk out now, she'll lose hope again. Tears welled in her eyes. And what about me, Ethan? What do I lose? He had no answer. Love exposed, the next morning she was gone. Ethan went to his grandmother's room, ready to confess everything. But the old woman smiled gently. I know, dear. I'm old, not blind. I saw the way you looked at her. That wasn't fake, his breath caught. You knew? She chuckled weakly. Lila wasn't pretending, and neither were you. Maybe you just needed someone brave enough to show you how to love again. The redemption 2 weeks later, Ethan showed up at the small cafe where Lila worked. He wasn't wearing his usual armor of arrogance. He looked human. I don't need a fake bride anymore, he said quietly. I need you. Lila froze, coffee cup in hand. Ethan, stop. I was a coward, he interrupted. I built walls so no one could hurt me. But you, his voice cracked. You smiled, and suddenly I didn't want the walls anymore. She looked into his eyes and saw it. Honesty. Vulnerability. Love, I don't need your money. Ethan, she said softly. I know, he whispered, stepping closer. That's why I need you. And for the first time, the ruthless CEO smiled, truly smiled. Epilogue. A week that changed. Forever, 1 week of pretending turned into a lifetime of loving. Lila never wanted luxury. She wanted truth. Ethan, for all his power, learned that the greatest deal he'd ever make wasn't in business but in love. Together, they built not just an empire but a home filled with laughter, coffee-stained mornings and small, perfect smiles that said forever. Message. Love doesn't always arrive with fireworks. It sometimes begins as a contract, a favor, a pretend. But real love breaks through pride, money, and fear. Even the coldest hearts can melt when met with kindness, and sometimes 1 week is enough to change a lifetime.